So let's start out here with Trey Lance. It looked like he had a better day than he did in day one. He was described as more conservative in day one, and it just didn't really seem like he was impressive in that first day for the Cowboys. But I'm happy to hear that he had a better day too. Here's the thing with Trey Lance. Cowboys fans should want Trey Lance to play at a very high level in the preseason, because if he does, somebody is going to want to trade for him. Right? The Cowboys gave up a 4th-round pick to go get him. I thought they overpaid for him. It didn't look like any other team was willing to give up a 5th-round pick for the guy, and the Cowboys had to overpay because they didn't have a 5th-round pick for the following season. So that's why they ended up trading the 4th-round pick for him. But if you can end up getting a 3rd or even a 2nd-round pick back, not saying it's going to happen, but if you can do that, then the trade's a success. That trade to me, I don't believe we've seen the end result of that trade yet. We're going to get a better idea on whether it was a good trade or not, depending on the outcome of what happens. If you trade him for a higher pick than what you gave out, then that's very valuable. But if you end up just letting him go in free agency, the trade was a massive failure, right? He gave you nothing last year. You traded for Stephon Gilmore and Brandon Cooks for less draft compensation, and they gave you way more production last year. So there's a lot riding on Trey Lance in the preseason here. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens because, I would say this. I think that the Cowboys are going to have a quarterback that can legitimately make plays this preseason. They haven't really had that in the previous few preseasons here, which kind of gave you like a wrong or a rough idea of what this receiver room looked like. Like you would hear about guys in camp going crazy like Jalen Brooks, and then Cooper Rush would be throwing them the ball in preseason, and you're just like, I don't know. This just doesn't look good, right? And I'm not saying it's a Jalen Brooks thing. I think it's more of a Cooper Rush thing, but that's besides the point. So, I mean, look, what are my expectations for Trey Lance this year? He has to win that quarterback 2 spot. I don't know if he's going to. I think politics will probably push him over the edge in terms of him winning that spot, but he has to win it. I don't want you to win it because of politics. That's my expectations of Trey Lance. Win it because you actually won the job, because you were the better player. You were the better quarterback. That's what I want to see out of Trey Lance. Win the spot because you are the better quarterback, not because the Cowboys traded draft capital to go get you and you had a big name coming out of the draft. Are there things to like about Trey Lance as a quarterback? Yeah, absolutely. Like, you like his athleticism, you like his arm strength, you like his size, but there's a lot of things to not like as well. You don't like his experience level. He wasn't necessarily accurate when he was playing in San Francisco when you watched the preseason or the regular season games. Pocket presence wasn't great. Footwork wasn't great. There were a lot of things that you look at and it's like, hey, yeah, there are some redeeming qualities here, but overall, just not a quarterback that I'm necessarily willing to invest in, but the Cowboys invested in him, so we have to talk about him. So, yeah, we should all want Trey Lance to play at a high level, even if Dak gets extended. Even if Dak gets that extension, you should want him to play at a high level, because that means you could potentially get trade compensation back. And look, one thing that I will say about the Cowboys is, like this past draft, when they traded out of that spot with the Detroit Lions, they hung him up for some really good compensation. Like that 73rd overall pick that they got in exchange for 24, that 29 and 73, they held them up. Do I think the Cowboys will hold up a quarterback desperate team if Trey Lance plays at a high level during preseason? I absolutely trust that the Cowboys would do that. I honestly do. So, with that being the case, Trey Lance playing at a high level is great for everybody involved, because if you don't re-sign your quarterback, then you feel confident about somebody potentially taking over that role, which, by the way, even if you don't re-sign Dak, you're still going to have to pay for Trey Lance if he shows promise, and there's a market there. You're not going to be bidding against yourself. You didn't pick up the 5th-year option. I mean, maybe you could franchise tag him, maybe, but at the same time, there's going to be a market for him. If he shows that he can play at a respectable to high level in the preseason. So that's something to take into consideration. So yeah, Trey Lance playing better in day 2 of training camp. Something I expected. I expected him to come out with some nerves in day 1, right? That's not too crazy to think because of how much pressure is on him. I mean, there's more pressure on him than there is on Dak. We all know what Dak's capable of. Even Dak himself, he's got to prove that he's worth a contract. No, he doesn't. Because if he doesn't get signed in Dallas, he's going to get signed somewhere else. There's no pressure on Dak. Dak's going to get paid regardless. There's way more pressure on Trey Lance because this is going to define whether or not he's going to be in the NFL or not, whether or not he's going to have an NFL career. There is far more pressure on Trey Lance than there is on Dak Prescott. And I think you're seeing that. And I think you saw a little bit of that in the first day. There were some nerves there. He worked out some of the nerves, and now it looks like in day 2, he's played much better. And that's something you want to say. As a Cowboys fan, even if they extend Dak, I think they do extend Dak. I've been on record saying that. But even still, I would love for Trey Lance to play at a high level just because, I mean, another thing I didn't talk about is what if he's got to play? And if he plays now, you have a good backup if he's still on the team, if he doesn't get traded to another team. I mean, there's plenty of teams out there that need a quarterback. I would have to look around the league to give you like a better, like, hey, this team for sure needs a quarterback. I look at the Raiders as a team, but then again, I think they want to see what they have in Aiden O'Connell, right? So we're going to have to wait and see from that perspective. But I do believe that there's going to be a market for Trey Lance if he shows out in preseason because there's always a market for good young quarterbacks. I mean, there always is. And we'll see if Trey Lance is one of those guys. We'll see if he fits that description. So far, he hasn't, but you never know.